In 1980, as director of my first counseling program, I began to suspect that poor nutrition was playing a role in the cases that did not respond to our intensive programs of psychotherapy and spiritual support. Our less successful clients were often emotional eaters. They either consumed lots of cookies, ice cream, chips, and fast food, or skipped meals altogether and drank lots of coffee and caffeinated sodas. I started hiring nutritionists to explore the possibility of a food-mood connection, and we soon realized that we were on the brink of a powerful breakthrough. Clients who could be persuaded to eat plenty of protein and fresh vegetables 3 times a day and avoid caffeine, sweets, and refined starches like white bread and pasta felt much better emotionally as well as physically. When they ate well, even those who had major psychological work to do were able to make steady advances in counseling with much less anguish and backsliding. However, the clients who did not make the nutritional changes, despite new communication skills, exercise, long vacations, and moderate work hours, did not do nearly as well. I was encouraged by these results, but I also had to admit that it took the clients who were able to stick with it about 10 weeks to fully withdraw from their bad mood junk foods. For most of them, this was 10 weeks of food cravings, fatigue, headaches, and only very slowly diminishing mood swings. More important, too many of our clients just couldn't wait it out and went back to their old junk foods and debilitating moods. We needed something more. The Amazing Aminos. Around this time, in the mid-1980s, I read about the work of neuroscientist Kenneth Blum, Ph.D., at the University of North Texas. A prolific researcher, Dr. Blum was studying the brain chemistry of alcoholics and drug addicts. In the course of this work, he'd identified a few genes that could hardwire the brain to underproduce its most potent feel-good brain chemicals, and instead produce the feel-bad mood chemistry that made his subjects so vulnerable to addiction. His research explained the perplexing feelings of anxiety, anger, and depression, the chronic insomnia, and the lack of a sense of well-being that plagued so many addicts even in recovery. He called it the reward deficiency syndrome. This finding was fascinating all by itself, but Dr. Blum made another, even more remarkable discovery. He found that he could override the bad mood genes by giving his research subjects a few supplemental nutrients. These brain foods, called amino acids, are concentrates of common proteins found in food. They were able to jumpstart the addict's genetically misprogrammed brain chemistry and radically improve their moods. The bottom line? The addicts who took the amino acids were able to stay away from drugs and alcohol. Those who took no aminos had 4 times higher relapse rates. I was very excited after reviewing Dr. Blum's studies. I had a sense that the amino acids were the missing ingredients in my fledgling nutritional therapy program. Since these supplements were identical to nutrients found in food and, unlike drugs, not foreign to the human body, my nutritionists and I felt comfortable recommending them. It was certainly worth a try. Combining Nutria with psychotherapy. Early on, I decided to give the aminos to 3 women struggling with bulimia, an eating disorder that is normally very difficult to treat. When they came to our clinic, all of them had been working hard in psychotherapy for some time with no improvement. Like most bulimics, they were depressed, obsessive, and self-critical. All were professionally well established, though, and all were married. One was a happily married 26-year-old. One was 35 and very unhappily married. And the third, at 48, needed marital help, but she and her husband were both determined to work things out. In addition to taking the aminos, these women committed themselves to following our standard program of protein and vegetable-rich, reduced carbohydrate foods, and psychotherapy. I was astonished at how the aminos accelerated each client's progress. Mood improvements that would normally have taken months to achieve began for these women in days. In 2 weeks on the aminos, all 3 women had freed themselves of their obsessions with food and most of their associated mood problems, and it kept getting better. After a few months on aminos, the happily married woman, having met all of her goals, graduated from therapy free of both bulimia and mood swings. The unhappily married woman began to do deep and productive therapy after years of being too weakened by her bulimia to use psychotherapy constructively. After her nutritional overhaul, she was able to work through her fears, leave her husband, and establish a happy life for herself. The third woman no longer felt much need for individual therapy. She'd been at it for years, but started couples therapy with good results. All 3 women were still making excellent progress 6 months later and starting to go off their aminos. Their psychotherapist was dumbfounded, and so were we. More than 15 years and several thousand clients later, the amino acids are still our most effective weapons for fighting false moods. We have consistently found that they not only improve mood almost instantly, but speed up psychotherapy as well. A well-nourished person who has had a brain chemistry tune-up with amino acids gets beyond psychological and emotional obstacles faster, deeper, and more successfully. Not only have our brain-tuned clients had quicker access to critical memories, but they've coped better with those memories, no longer paralyzed by biochemically exaggerated feelings of fear, guilt, or pain. The effects of nutritionally stabilized moods on our clients' relationships have also been extraordinary. I'll never forget the first family that we treated with both psychotherapy and nutritherapy. A father and mother came to see us, concerned about their 14-year-old son, who was having attention problems and depression, plus headache pains so severe that it often kept him at home from school. It soon became clear that Dad had some serious problems too. He was obsessively controlling and verbally abusive. Though they had received family counseling many times in the past, nothing had ever improved. When it became clear, after a few sessions, that Dad was actually deeply devoted to his family but simply unable to control his critical, angry feelings, I suggested that he meet with the same staff nutritionist who was seeing his son. He agreed because he could see that his son's headaches were responding to dietary changes and that his mood and ability to concentrate were improving on the amino acids. When Dad began taking amino acids himself, the change was immediate and powerful. His obsessive, explosive behavior evaporated entirely, much to the amazement and relief of his wife and son. Family therapy proceeded very constructively, since all family members were finally able to listen and respond to one another free of their false moods. Interestingly, Dad also needed some private psychotherapy to adjust to his new emotional style, especially in the business world, where his abrasive personality had become his trademark. In 1995, our staff began suggesting that our clients try potentially helpful aminos right in the office during their initial assessments. As a result, we've actually been present as the amino acids have taken effect, typically within 15 minutes. We've watched and cheered as hundreds of clients shed their false feelings of tension, apathy, irritability, and emotional pain right before our eyes. The word that our clients always use to describe this experience is amazing. What's more, our clients typically need to take the aminos for only 3 to 12 months. After that, their mood chemistry repairs are usually complete, though they must continue eating plenty of protein, vegetables, and other fresh whole foods, and taking their basic vitamin, mineral, and fatty acid supplements. How do the aminos eliminate false moods and revive true emotion? This is the secret. There are 22 different kinds of amino acids in high-protein foods like chicken, fish, beef, eggs, and cheese. You may have heard them referred to as the building blocks of protein. Each amino has its own name and unique duties to perform, but only very few special aminos can serve as fuels for the brain's 4 mood engines. Just 5 or 6 of these amino acids, taken as supplements, can effectively reverse all 4 of the brain deficiencies that cause false moods. Each of the 4 mood engines in your brain needs a different amino acid fuel. The lower your access to amino fuel, the more false mood symptoms you can develop. The question is, how much gas do you have in each of your engines? How do you know when you've run too low? How can you fill them up? Which amino brain fuels do you need? Where can you get them? How long will it take? You'll soon learn what the best brain foods are for you, and how to find and use the amino acid supplements that will jumpstart all of your emotional engines and keep them fired up. The 4 emotion generators in your brain are called neurotransmitters. Some of their specific names will probably be familiar to you: serotonin, catecholamines, GABA, and endorphin. Each of these 4 neurotransmitters has a distinctly different effect on your mood, depending largely on the availability of its particular amino acid fuel. A well-stocked brain produces true emotions. Depending on your life circumstances, you'll generally feel emotionally positive if your key neurotransmitter levels are high. A poorly stocked brain produces false moods. If you drop too low in any of the key neurotransmitters, you'll tend to develop a specific set of defective moods as a result. Once any of the false moods evolve, their standard symptoms may come and go, become more or less intense, or remain constant. Whatever the case, the appropriate amino acid fuels, taken as supplements, can reliably, safely, and quickly dispel every vestige of all 4 false mood types by raising the levels of all 4 vital neurotransmitters. Fortunately, every amino acid you'll need can be easily found at your neighborhood health food store or drugstore, or by phone or online. Your brain's true and false emotional chemistry. If you're high in serotonin, you're positive, confident, flexible, and easygoing. If you're sinking in serotonin, you'll tend to become negative, obsessive, worried, irritable, and sleepless. If you're high in catecholamines, you're energized, upbeat, and alert. If your catecholamines have crashed, you can sink into a flat, lethargic funk. If you're high in GABA, You're relaxed and stress-free. If there's a gap in your GABA, you'll be wired, stressed, and overwhelmed. If you're high in endorphins, you're full of cozy feelings of comfort, pleasure, and euphoria. If you're near the end of your endorphins, you may be crying during commercials and overly sensitive to hurt. Why are your mood engines running on empty? Did you inherit false moods? Some of us tolerate the same adverse circumstances with much more serenity than others. My mother endured 50 years of marital stress, polio, cancer, heart disease, gallbladder disease, thyroid disease, and more, with relish, grit, high comedy, courage, and selflessness. She was rarely depressed, irritable, or fearful. What was her secret? She had two. She'd inherited her own mother's nicely balanced brain chemistry, and she always ate lots of protein that maintained it. Did you inherit good mood genes? Many of us didn't. Over the years, numerous clients have brought in parents, siblings, and children with false mood symptoms very similar to their own. A brief tune-up with amino acids and a dietary adjustment was often all that was required to set them right. These experiences taught me how often false moods run in families. Did you think that your father was hard to be around on purpose, or that your mother cried at any upset because she was so weak? These are the kinds of questions that I have learned to ask when exploring the types of negative moods that run in families. My clients have often found the answers to be unexpectedly liberating. Although Anna hated to compare her irritability with her father's rages, when she realized that they shared a common brain chemistry deficiency, she ended up having new compassion for him and less of a hurtful sense that his abusiveness had been personal to her. We all know families in which everyone is laid back and others where no one can slow down. Outgoing, cheery families, and shy, quiet families. Worried, perfectionistic, neatnik families, and sloppy, low-energy families. Ask yourself as you go through this book, do my family members share any of my mood traits? Are we the same false mood type? But you won't need to worry about being a stick in the mood. Although we used to think that genetic traits were intractable, when it comes to moods, even genetic programming can be reprogrammed remarkably easily by amino acids and other nutrients. Is it your diet? Regardless of your genes, but especially if your mood programming genes are inefficient, good nutrition is essential. It's no coincidence that our grandparents' generation had a more cheerful disposition than ours, although they certainly had their share of wars, depressions, diseases, and other hardships to deal with. The fact is that their diets were better. They were lucky enough to grow up before the junk food invasion and before low-calorie dieting had become a way of life. They ate 3 squares a day, including plenty of protein-rich foods like beef, chicken, fish, eggs, and cheese. Why are these particular foods so important? Because our 4 neurotransmitters can be made only out of the amino acids found in high-protein foods. But protein is not all we need. We also need a good supply of vitamins and minerals to make this magic happen. They're found in fresh fruits and vegetables, which your grandparents ate in abundance, but which are lacking in the standard American diet. And there's something else that you may be shocked to learn. If you don't eat enough of the right kinds of fats, we will not be able to use those natural mood-boosting amino fuels. Our grandparents ate gobs of the fats we're no longer eating, like butter, and they had much less heart disease, cancer, and depression than we have. More on this intriguing story in Chapter 8. Then there's the junk food factor. Commercial food processing strips food of the vital nutrients needed to make and operate your brain's neurotransmitters. These bad mood foods, including white bread and pasta, sugar-laden cereals and snacks, fried and hydrogenated fats, caffeine, and even the artificial sweeteners in diet soda, can actually interfere with your brain's efforts to create good moods. You can't pour sugar or any of these other stressful substances into your mood tanks and expect a smooth emotional ride. Is it your lifestyle? Our modern lifestyle must share some of the blame for our epidemic of mood imbalance. Too much stress, particularly of the unique 21st century variety, can deplete the brain of its feel-good neurotransmitters